Hello everyone! Thank you so much for joining us. This is our first tutorial for our series, Mystery Charts. We're very excited. Will and I have
Hello.
planned on doing this video for some time now, right?
Yeah.
Very excited. So the way it works is I've chosen a chart that Will hasn't seen whose chart it is. So it's a chart of a uh, famous person that most of you are probably familiar with, but if you are not, that's okay, because the aim is in this video series to show this chart of this anonymous person. And while Will has had time to study it, he's bringing everything to the table now. We haven't rehearsed this. This is all going to be natural. So he's bringing everything up now. We're going to decipher the chart. He's going to ask me questions, and you're going to see how he approaches the chart. He's a beginner. He's going to tell you a little bit about how he's learned astrology so far. So the great thing is that you don't have to be a practicing astrologer or anyone who's advanced or even intermediate. You could just be someone who's interested in learning. And the purpose is to see how these energy dynamics are playing out in a chart and how they represent the person, how they manifest into the actual person, which we will reveal at the end of the video. So it's going to be very interactive and we're excited. So let's get started. Do you want to go ahead and talk about maybe
Yeah.
how you began astrology and also just how to approach a chart? Because I know for some of us, maybe beginners, when you first look at a chart, it's like, where do I start? It could be overwhelming.
Okay. So I learned from reading books first. So the first book I got was this one, which is the only astrology book you'll ever need. And this one it's good, but it's mainly focused on the sun sign, and it has some stuff in the back on other things as well. Then a similar one is The Secret to Astrology. And this one I like. Both of these I talked about in previous videos I made on my channel. So if people want more information about them, they can check that out. And this one I like because it has a lot more pictures and illustrations, and I showed some of those as well. So the one that I do recommend highly is the one by Demetra George. This workbook, because it actually has you go through and work out your own chart and analyze it. So I think that it's a really good idea for someone to start with their own personal chart and learn from there. And also, what I did was I worked with you. I asked you questions. I looked at your family's charts and just learned a little bit more each time I talked to you about different questions that I had about astrology. So that's helped me a lot. And also, tarot and astrology helps me too, because I find that since I know the cards, it really does help me understand the signs that are associated with them.
No,
So yeah, that makes it pretty clear. I think if you have a good grasp on tarot, that's a good way to learn too.
definitely.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
definitely.
I'm glad that tarot astrology is helping you too.
Definitely. And I find that when I learn more about astrology and I go back and watch your videos on tarot and astrology, I get a lot more out of it. I got a lot out the first time, but the more I start learning too by doing my own chart and going back and looking, that helps even more.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
Good. So now, before we start, I just wanted to make something clear that I thought is important to mention here. That these videos we're making in this video series are not meant to be astrology lessons per se. I mean, hopefully you're going to learn something by watching these, but they're not lessons in that they're not meant to be structured in ways that this is how you're supposed to approach a chart. We're not going to be teaching. It's more of an immersion, just like getting into it. It's kind of like Will and I were talking before about like how it's kind of like learning a language, because you can read books and you can learn grammar and sentence structure, all of that, but it's not until you actually go into the culture and you start interacting and speaking to the people that you actually learn their language and learn how to speak. And I can definitely attest to that from personal experience learning English, that when you're thrown into it, all you need is really just the basics. So the basics of just like signs, planets, basics of houses and the ascendant midheaven is really all you need to kind of start getting into this. And I also think that your intuition plays a really important role, because when I was first learning astrology, like in the very, very beginning, I realize now that my intuition told me a lot about the charts. And now that I know a lot more, now that I have more knowledge, sometimes the challenge is to allow my intuition to come through. So that can be the challenge. But when you have the beginner's mind, your intuition is just a lot more open. And it's just really incredible how much information you can get just from knowing the basics and using your intuition.
Definitely, because I'm definitely not an expert and I'm pretty much exploring, like you're just describing. And so there will be good things and there'll be things that can be improved upon. So the point is to learn from both.
Mm-hmm.
So um, I want to go ahead and begin talking about it. And the first thing that I want to do is just show the chart so that we can all take a look at the chart. So this is the chart, and this is a male. So there's a little bit of information there. This is a male's chart, and I want you to just take in the chart. That's the first thing. Just take in the overall chart, take a look at it, and get a feel for if there are clusters of planets or if there are planets in certain places on the chart in groups. I think that that's the best thing to do, just to look at the entire thing and just look at where the planets are. So, for example, um, maybe someone may have a lot of planets on the top of the chart. That could be, doesn't have to be, but it could be an indication that they are more extroverted. And if they have a lot of planets at the bottom of the chart, that may be an indication that they are more introverted. Now, there's a reason behind that. And do you want me to explain, why I feel that way? Or do you think it's kind of self-explanatory that why that the top would be more extroverted and the bottom would be more introverted?
I mean, I think you can give just a quick.
Okay. So the bottom is basically the nighttime and the top is the daytime, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the daytime is more outward, more light, and then the dark is more inward, internal.
Yeah.
So those planets that are down at the bottom may be more about your internal self, and the planets that are at the top may be more expressed. They may be more public and seen and out in the light, exposed.
Exactly.
And so, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you can think of the bottom being the nighttime and then the top being the daytime. So the bottom being subjective versus objective, the top.
Mm-hmm. And what we mean by bottom and top is there's a line that goes right across, and I'll highlight that in the chart when I put it up on the video. But there's a horizontal line that goes right across the middle. So that separates the top and the bottom. And the first sign that most people look at is the sun sign. And the sun sign in this case is the sun is in Pisces. Now, a lot of people stop right there though. And what do you think about that? Some people stop at the sun sign. And
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
I mean, the sun sign says a lot about your personality, but we know that there's a lot more dimensions to the chart. And if we just take purely just the sun, the moon, the ascendant, and the midheaven, that could give us a lot of information about the person. Not even looking at the aspects, not even looking at the details of the chart, just those very simple things. And like what you said, the top of the chart, the bottom of the chart. I like how you always look at that, actually, because when you were looking at my family charts, you right away said, well, this person is very extroverted or very introverted. I think it's a big clue into someone's
Right. And I was surprised by how I was pretty much on target most of the time with that. it didn't really, well, my light went out. Hold on a second. Okay, there we go. It really didn't, turn out to be a gamble. It was something that I was pretty confident doing. But how could that be, how could stopping at that point be an issue? So why would somebody want to look at everything else? Why would somebody not? So if you're pretty, if someone would say they're pretty accurate looking at their sun sign and say, okay, I can look at someone's sun sign, ascendant, and moon, and I
Mm-hmm.
know so much about them, why would they even want to look at the rest of the chart?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I mean, one thing that I look at when I look at a chart, some people say I'm a Sagittarius, but I'm not really a Sagittarius. I don't fit into the basic things that I read. And that's your sun sign. But if you look at your chart, you might be more Scorpio because you might have your ascendant in Scorpio, your moon in Scorpio. So like someone like me, I feel very connected to Sagittarius energy because I have not just my sun in there, but I have 3 other planets in there. So that makes Sagittarius a lot stronger in my chart. So, when you look at the sun sign, you also have to see, is there any other signs, any other planets that are in the same sign as the sun sign? So like in this case, you were saying he's sun in Pisces, and then he also has in a Mercury in Pisces and Venus in Pisces. So we can say, I guess, the issues of Pisces are very strong for this person, right? Do you want to elaborate maybe on that?
Yeah, I agree. So I felt like it would be, but I always wanted to. I always feel like I should refrain from making that assumption right off the bat until I look at other things, because if I go off the path and say, okay, well, Pisces is a water sign, it's very emotional. I think that this person's very emotional. It is possible that they may not be as emotional as I'm thinking as a typical Pisces, or they may not have that same level of emotion that I might associate it with someone else who I know as a Pisces and totally fits the mold. So I always keep it in my mind. So I'm going to say at the beginning, looking at this person's chart, that they are emotional, but I do keep it in the back of my mind that that's a possibility, because I want to look at other things that could influence that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So moving, well, actually, before we move on, the one thing I want to ask you about Pisces is, what tarot card
Mm-hmm.
would that
So
be?
it would be the moon card and also Neptune, because Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. Neptune correlates to the hanged man. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would say traditionally, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, so the Wheel of Fortune. So the moon, Wheel of Fortune, and hanged man, those are the Piscean cards.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the next thing is this person's ascendant sign, which is the sign that is going to be right at the horizon line on the left side. If you're looking at the chart on the left side. So this person's is Aquarius. And from what I know about Aquarius is very unique, very different, stands out in a crowd maybe because of, it could be physical appearance, it could be their clothing, it could be their personality, but usually something that doesn't go with the 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 norm. And
Mm-hmm.
so for my initial picture of this person, I'm thinking, and I'm getting an emotional person that stands out. So basic, on a basic level. So I'll add more details as we go along, but on a basic level so far. Um,
And
and
then, yeah.
Yep. Go ahead.
And then do you want to say, did you, I don't know if you were going to say this next, but the moon is also in Aquarius. So that gives even more emphasis to that sign.
Yes. Yes. So I was going to say the moon is in Aquarius, and then you were saying that also Pisces is the moon card in tarot. So there's a lot of emotion. So
Mm-hmm.
the moon being in Aquarius means that not only are they on an emotional level, not only are they very deep emotionally, but it's a very different type of, maybe more complex. maybe more of a complex emotion, not something you would normally encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Very mysterious, kind of a mysterious emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And the
so,
moon is right, it's very close to the ascendant. It's in the first house, so the moon is also emphasized even more.
right,
The
right.
moon is the high priestess card, and with the moon, so you think like with the moon combination right now, combination of moon and Pisces and water sign. We have Pisces, and Pisces is a very spiritual sign, so we have this spirituality, the mystic, very sensitive, all of those things. And then
Mm,
Aquarius is an air sign, so that's also another thing. It's, you think of the higher mind. Sagittarius, Aquarius, they're up there on the chart. They're high thinkers, the big thinkers. And Uranus is the ruler, the modern ruler of Aquarius, and that's like the big thinker. It's like the higher octave of Mercury. So thoughts, those are important as well.
oh, okay. Okay.
Bigger thoughts, bigger thinking, outside the box thinking.
Okay.
In combination with everything we said. So we're always blending, right? With astrology, we're always finding little hints, whether you get that intuitively, whether you see it visually, whether you hear keywords, and we're just blending them. So
Mm-hmm.
Pisces, the moon, so far,
Mm-hmm.
Aquarius, those are
Mm-hmm.
so far what we're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we have those things, and so the first house is what we're focused on right now. People aren't sure where we're at on the chart, and I'm going to highlight that so people can see that section. But the other things that are in that first house, which is about the self, right? That's about your persona, your personality, because each of the houses covers a different category. So the other two things that are in that are um, Mercury and Venus. And from what I know is that the planets that are closer to the sun seem to have more of a personal effect. They have more of a play in an individual's life. They're not more associated with time periods and generations of people and like groups of people.
Yes, so personal planets.
Mm-hmm.
So the sun is very important. It's the individual self. And then when you have it next to any planets, those planets become important. And in this case, you have the Mercury and the Venus in the same house as the sun in Pisces. So we know that to this person's individuality, the mind is important as well, Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
And also Venus is how they relate to people, how they might be in relationships, harmony,
Mm-hmm.
beauty, art.
Right. And I thought about that. I thought about the fact that even though this person is emotional, even though, there's a high indication of that, when I saw Mercury and I saw Venus there, it made me wonder, okay, well, maybe it's emotional intelligence, maybe it's more empathic, maybe it's more poetic, maybe it's because,
Mm-hmm.
Venus is very,
Mm-hmm.
very, sensual and poetic. And
Yeah, definitely. And Venus and Pisces, that's a great delineation. It's very poetic. Pisces is the poetic sign, and Venus even makes that even more so.
right, right. So I think having those two planets there really does stabilize this person in a way because it allows them to do something with that emotion, to be intelligent about that emotion and focus it and maybe creative with it. So you have the mind there with Mercury and then Venus there with the creative expression. So it's a very powerful combination, I think, as far as being able to express emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
And then ascendant is important. When we look at the ascendant, it's important to look at the ruler of the ascendant. So I go by Uranus being the modern ruler of ascendant. And if you
mhm,
if you look at this chart, where is Uranus? It's up there on the chart. and look at what sign it's in. Whenever a planet is high up on the chart, it's elevated. It gets a lot of attention. It's important. So
Mm-hmm.
that planet being in Sagittarius, the planet of uh, the, the the higher octave of Mercury, the planet of the mind, because you're talking about the mind, and then here there's another Uranus, the elevated mind, and it's
Mm-hmm.
elevated on top of the chart as well in Sagittarius. So, what does Sagittarius represent? What kind of
Right. Yeah. Philosophy, higher education.
higher mind? Yeah.
Right. Right. Now, the one thing about Uranus that kind of I I wasn't really sure where to place it because even though it's the chart ruler, I do know that it's also very rebellious. It's a very not wanting to conform type of energy.
Yes. Exactly. The
So
Fool card.
I right. So I put that on the back burner because I didn't want to put this person in the category of extreme rebel or anything, but I kept it at the back of my mind. So I just wanted to keep that there, and I'll touch back on that, in the future as that comes up. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
And you might even be thinking, it's different. Different. It could be in different ways of thinking, right? Like we said, outside the box could be
mm,
with thinking as well, with philosophies, with belief
exactly,
being in Sagittarius.
exactly, not wanting to think like the norm, like maybe just going against not so much as far as it could be any category. It doesn't have to be politics. It doesn't have to be a rebel against religion or anything like that. It could be so many different things.
Just to do a quick recap, so far we talked about the first house being important because there's a whole bunch of planets concentrated in that house. So our attention goes there. Our attention goes to whatever sticks out. So we have the moon there, Sun, Venus, and Mercury. Sun, Mercury, Venus in Pisces, moon in Aquarius. And then on the top of the chart, we talked about Uranus being the ruler of the ascendant, ruler of Aquarius, being in Sagittarius, and close to the midheaven. So maybe you want to talk now about the houses and the midheaven, and just to go through that. And I want to say a little bit about the midheaven too, but I'll let you.
Yeah,
I'll let you go ahead.
yeah, definitely. Actually, before we do that, I just do have one question about the chart ruler.
Yep.
Um, what exactly does that mean?
Okay, so the chart ruler is the planet that rules the sign on the ascendant. So here is we have Aquarius as the ascendant, and Uranus rules Aquarius
Mm-hmm.
in modern astrology. I'm going by modern, and sometimes I take the traditional rulers into consideration too. In this case, that would be Saturn. Saturn is in Capricorn, so Saturn is in its own sign. That's also very important. We would think of like everything that Saturn stands for, like discipline, commitment, those things are important. This person has got these like a power within the Saturn in Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very powerful Saturn. And so the chart ruler is basically it's just a planet that rules the chart, and that planet is important. The position of that planet is important. And for this person, it's even more highlighted because it's at the top of the chart. So it's
Okay.
elevated. So it's
Okay. So
close to
it makes the planet more important,
yeah.
but it's not something that you need to take in consideration for the entire chart. Like you don't look at all of the chart and think, okay, well, also let me think about the chart ruler.
We always look at every part of the chart and we kind of keep it all together. They're all important, but certain things are highlighted in everybody's chart. For example, the sun sign, the moon, the ascendant, and the chart ruler. So those are really important factors, but it's not like we forget about the rest of the chart. I mean, we take everything into importance, but sometimes we uh, look at certain things, keep that in the back of our mind as we look at the chart. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I just wanted to emphasize it because nobody talks about the chart ruler. And if it's such a highlighted, important part of it, I just find it interesting because, like with me, my chart ruler is Mercury, and I before I knew that, I didn't realize how important that was as far as my personality, as far as my persona. I mean, it really does play a major part, a major role in um, looking at my characteristics. So I think that that's a very overlooked thing, and I was just more curious about it.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah. So okay. Yeah. So the houses. You wanted to first, before we did that, touch on the Midhaven, or did you want to go right into the houses?
You can just go right into it, but whenever you're at the Midheaven, I just wanted to just maybe say a few things.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So the houses, they're actually going clockwise. So they start at the ascendant, which with the first house, and I'll highlight that also when we put this up, and then they go counterclockwise to the second house, and then the third, which is right at the bottom, the third and fourth right at the bottom, and then they all have different categories, like different things that they cover. For me personally, the house that I like to look at is the eighth house. And now, the eighth house, when you look at the information about the eighth house, it's a mixed bag of all kinds of things. But the most specific thing that I look at is the occult. That's also um, just an area that I'm really interested in. I think for the people that watch our channel, that's something that I think that is interesting, and they'll probably be interested in as well, because that deals with the things that we talk about on our channels, and it is important to me because I find that I learn a lot about a person by focusing on just that house for some reason. So
Mm,
this
that's
person this person doesn't have any planets in the eighth house, but they do have Libra. So Libra is where the eighth house is for them, and I found that interesting. I think that, well, from what I know about Libra, it's a very fair, very partner. Let's work together type of energy. Very structured, level-headed. It's not anything extreme or out of the way. So I think that having Libra in that house is a very safe type of energy when it comes to the occult. I don't see this as someone that would go overboard with the occult or like really be extreme, but I think that they would have a very balanced way of looking at it. So
mm,
I would say um, a bit of everything, not too judgmental as far as what's light, what's dark.
okay.
Yeah,
So someone probably who engages with it on a deeply spiritual level, maybe.
I think so. I think so. In a deeply spiritual way, but not. I wouldn't say. I just wouldn't say extreme. I would say deeply spiritual, but I wouldn't say extreme. I wouldn't say
Hmm.
they were somebody that would be um, like, if it was Uranus, or, I mean, like if they had like Uranus in there
Yeah.
with something like, something that would make it a little more extreme, I would say that. But I don't see that with this person. I just see someone that wouldn't be against it, but wouldn't be, taking
I,
it to,
yeah, I understand.
yeah. Okay. So,
So then, I think I wanted to ask you, what do you think about, because to me that's very important. What do
hmm.
you think, and what do you all think about Uranus and what we said about Uranus and Sagittarius and what we know and what we said about Sagittarius being at the midheaven? So how would you delineate that? Midheaven, what is a midheaven? I mean,
Yeah,
midheaven,
the midheaven, I think it represents goals, like the direction the person's headed is, like their life path, from what I've understood. I'm not sure if that's the correct explanation. You might, if you want to clarify
okay.
that.
So you said midheaven, we generally hear of careers, right? The
Yeah,
person's
like a path, career path, goal.
so
That's
career
like,
path. So it's more than that. It's that, but it's more than that. It's basically the how you are seen in the outside world. It's the public. It's the outer persona. as opposed to the inner persona on the bottom of the chart being Cancer, the icy. The midheaven is Capricorn, out there. It's your ambitions, it's your aspirations. It's what motivates you out there in public, your public image, your reputation. That's a big one too. So all of those things. And then if you consider here that how this person is seen, their public image is defined by the sign of the midheaven and if there is any planets near the midheaven. So in this case, we have Uranus and Sagittarius.
Okay. So this person would be seen as someone that would be into philosophy, into the higher mind, into higher education. But also if Uranus there, they would be a bit different, a bit more, on the fringes of that, maybe changing those types of thoughts and adding something new. So I would see that based on the midheaven. But
that's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So that's interesting though, because I didn't know that. I never focused that much on the midheaven as a part of the person's public or outward expression being emphasized that much, because I've always saw that more as the first house. So knowing that really does help me, in the future, see that as something that's very exalted and important in the chart.
I mean, all the angles are important. The ascendant is always the one we talk about, because the ascendant is personally important. It's your personal contact with your environment, with your, with how you take in your environment. So it personally affects you. And then the midheaven is your outer persona. It's how the world out there sees you, and it's not always highlighted, but in this case it would be because there's a planet touching it. I always give importance to any planets that are on top of the chart close to the midheaven. I mean, it's not touching the midheaven, but it's close enough. It's, I think, within 10 degrees.
Yeah. One other question that I do have is, they do have quite a few houses that don't have any planets in them. What are your thoughts on that? I've heard different things about that. I've heard that it means that that's just not an area of focus for that person during this lifetime.
There's many different interpretations. Some people say it's not the area of challenge. It's not what they're here to work through, like their karma. I mean, there's many different ways of looking at it, but I usually give it importance if I see anything standing out. So for example, if I see that the particular chart pattern shows an emphasis in one half of the chart or one quadrant, one part of the chart, then I might look at what's missing. Because then that person might not be balanced. They might be focusing too much on one area of life and not the rest. But I don't always think about the empty houses. Just depends on, in this case, that wouldn't be what I would focus on.
Oh, okay.
For me personally.
No, yeah, I usually don't consider that either. I usually just look at the sign that's there and then go with that and give it some thought. But I never ignore it just because it's empty. So I know some people feel like, oh, you just ignore that house because it's empty.
Yeah, I mean, we all have everything in our chart. We all have all the 12 signs in our chart. So, even if you don't have a planet there, you still have Cancer somewhere, Leo somewhere. You still have it. It's all a part of you. So it's all important.
Definitely.
There's a lot to look at in the charts. And of course, with the limited time we have, we're not looking at everything. There's so much we haven't even talked about. We haven't talked about the nodes, for example. There's a lot we haven't, like the asteroids. But as we go through this series, I just want again to re-emphasize that we'll learn different things as we go through.
Okay, so on that note, I think that any other questions I have or ideas about reading the chart, what I'll do is we'll save those for future videos and add them to the knowledge that we're starting. So we're building, and slowly, like you said, on each video, we'll have more tips, more ideas, more concepts to discuss.
Yeah, it's like an unfolding process.
Yeah. And so I think for right now, what we can do is, because I'm curious, I've had this chart for weeks and I'm very, very curious about who it actually is. So I think we should go ahead and discuss that now.
Okay, so
Okay.
are
Yeah.
you ready? I'm going to reveal who it is.
Okay.
So this is a chart of Manly Hall.
Wow.
And you know who
That
he
is,
is.
yes.
Some of
Yes.
you may not know who that is. I'll talk about that in a moment. So
Wow. Wow.
yeah, so
Very, very interesting.
you
I'm
didn't.
still taking in, like, because I got the name now, I'm still putting pieces and things together. Now I have to like go back and look at the things that I said. But I feel like it was yeah, it was a very very good set of information about him.
Yeah, so you did an excellent job. I mean, I think everything you said tied really well into him.
Because I was clueless about who this could be. I had no idea. None.
So for those of you who
Yes.
don't know, Manly Palmer Hall was a philosopher, Canadian-born author and mystic. So I'm just going to read a little bit, a bio about him from the Astro Theme website. So born on March 18th, 1901, he was a Canadian-born author and mystic. He is perhaps most famous for his work on the secret teachings of all ages, an encyclopedic outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Kabbalistic, and Rosicrucian symbolical philosophy, which is widely regarded as his magnum opus, published in 1929 when he was just 27 years old. He has been widely recognized as a leading scholar in the fields of religion, mythology, mysticism, and the occult. Carl Jung, when writing Psychology and Alchemy, borrowed material from Hall's private collection. So that tells you a little bit about him. And I think that all fits into what we were talking about, right? We talked about Sagittarius, his studies on religion, philosophy, the higher mind, higher thinking, and how he was a great influence for great thinkers like Carl Jung, for example, as well.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, yeah, I have to go back and look at what I said again. And I think I'll be able to see, you know, the thing, how they relate. So, because I don't remember everything I said.
If you've been watching my channel, and especially if you've been watching Tarot and Astrology series, I've quoted him a few times. He's one of my biggest inspirations. I think he just has a brilliant mind. Lots of videos on YouTube that he's got from his teachings. So let's have a quick look just at the chart, just so the things that we talked about. I mean, you brought up the Pisces, the element of mysticism, spirituality, and then with the highest sensitivity, his poetic nature.
Right. That's one of the things, I think one of the big things that stood out to me was the poetic side with the emotion. And I think from what I know about him, the way he presented his information and his books and just in all the work that he's done, it does have a very emotional, poetic side to it that really captures the audience. So.
Yeah, and then the moon in Aquarius Ascendant, that kind of Aquarius being the fixed air sign with its ruler. We talked about Uranus in Sagittarius at the midheaven, so I think that's a very big clue to him as well.
And also for that time period, very cutting edge. So that whole Aquarius / Uranus energy, I can totally see that in him.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and he's interested in the occult,
which is for that time very serious thing to be interested in. You know, it was not accepted as much as it is today. So.
And then Mercury being a big influence for him, you know, when we talked about being close to his sun in the first house, and as well as Uranus, Mercury and Uranus both being planets of the mind. Uranus, the higher octave of the mind, and the Sagittarius, the philosopher, the teacher. Exactly. All of those things really just fit in. It's archetypally a really nice portrait that we're looking at. And keep in mind again that we just look very simply at the very basics. We haven't even gotten to aspects really yet.
Exactly. And I'd love to hear what people have to say. So if there's any comments about things that they noticed, that you noticed in the chart, then please put it in the comments. And
definitely, because I'm sure that people are going to touch on things that we haven't touched on, even the basics, like for example Neptune and its position in Gemini and the moon connection. So yes, please share anything. I mean, this is more than anything, we want this to be interactive. We want this to be about talking, looking, talking, experiencing it together.
Exactly, because there are people out there probably know a lot more about Manly Hall than I do, and maybe you have some insights. So yes, exactly. Get the discussion.
Please share them with us. We'd love to hear from you, and also let us know if this was useful, if you enjoyed it, if it was any way helpful. If you are interested in seeing more of this series, I mean, we would love to keep going with this series.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So I think I'm looking forward to the next one. And so for the next one, I don't know, we'll have to discuss what we want to do, but I think it'll be really interesting.
So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope you guys did too. And I hope you will continue to learn with us as we go through this series. We have some really cool ideas. We're going to change it up a little bit once in a while as well.
Definitely. Well, it was really nice collaborating with you, sweetie, and I really enjoyed it, and so good to see you. And next time I think we'll do just as well.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it too. Thank you everyone for watching, and we are really excited to hear from you.
Thank you for watching.
Sending you lots of love. Blessings.
Bye.
Bye.